Okay, this is a press conference, so if there's non-press here, please do not applaud. And second, when you ask questions, please identify yourself.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. In a recent Zogby poll, 57% of the American people wanted me on the presidential debate. These debates have not involved any debates on the war. Both George W. Bush and John Kerry are for intensifying the war in Iraq. The Nader ticket has a reasonable 6-month withdrawal strategy from Iraq. We have a peace strategy. The other two major candidates have a war strategy, a quagmire strategy. Another, Vietnam. The quicksands of Iraq will bleed more of our troops, bleed more tens of billions of dollars that should be used back here at home, while inflicting large casualties on innocent civilians in Iraq and becoming a quagmire magnet for more terrorism, more violence, and more instability in that area of the world. We need a real debate in this country over the war. There may be a military draft coming unless the government outsources to Halliburton and other corporations more and more of the military jobs. Today, the debates will be on domestic policy. George W. Bush has done nothing about skyrocketing gasoline and home heating prices. He has said nothing about skyrocketing home heating and gasoline prices. He doesn't care about the impact of these prices on small business, truckers, and motorists. His administration is marinated in oil. John Kerry hasn't said much about high gasoline and home energy, home fuel prices. There's no debate on so many of these issues. There is no debate between Bush and Kerry on living family wage. Americans believe that if you work full-time, you should earn enough to live on it. That's not the case for 47 million full-time workers in this country making Walmart-type wages, 6, 7, 8, 9, under $10 an hour. There's no debate on a real health insurance plan that focuses on quality and cost control, preventive health, and of course, covering everybody while giving them their free choice of doctors and hospitals in a much more efficient way than the present corrupt, gouging, corporate-dominated system that ties the hands of doctors and nurses. There's no debate on the corporate crime wave in this country that has been documented again and again by the business press. But the political system in our country has been so weakened by corporate power, corporate money, corporate consultants, that neither the Democrats nor the Republicans have a plan to crack down on corporate crime, fraud, and abuse that is poisoning the environment, defrauding consumers, depleting worker pensions, and taking taxpayer dollars for corporate subsidies, handouts, and giveaways. There's no debate on the need in this country to have a public works program financed by the repeal of the tax cut for the wealthy, to modernize and repair the schools, clinics, drinking water systems, public transit systems, and other infrastructure that would create good jobs in every community that could never be exported to China. There's no debate on corporate globalization, NAFTA and WTO style, that's sidestepping our democracy, our courts, our regulatory agencies, and imposing the global rule of corporatism. There's no debate on consumer protection, words that are never mentioned by either candidate, as if consumer dollars are not being cheated and swindled in the tens of billions of dollars every year in this country without adequate law enforcement. Where's the debate? I want to debate these two gentlemen. I've worked harder than they have for 40 years, helping the American people in advancing their health, safety, economic well-being. I've traveled to more states than they have, all 50 states in this campaign. I'm an underdog candidate, to be sure, because the two parties have rigged the system against any competition, from ballot access barriers to exclusion from presidential debates and everything in between. But I'm the underdog candidate speaking for tens of millions of American underdogs who are pushed around, defrauded, underpaid, denied health care, disrespected and ignored while they do the daily work of our country. In future elections, we have to be more intolerant of political bigotry by the two parties who think they own the American voters, who think they're entitled to the American voters' votes instead of having to earn them. Just as competition is good in the marketplace, just as seeds are allowed to sprout in nature, we must have more voices and choices for the American people on the ballot and on the debate platform. Now, I've been trying to reach Zorro recently in order to see what he can do about the air conditioning ducts of the debate facility, so I can possibly crawl through them and with my cape land on the stage between Kerry and Bush. That would certainly increase the television audience for those debates. Thank you very much.
Mr. Nader. Roger Downing from NBC News. How frustrating is it for you personally to be, in a sense, barred from the debate by not being taken as a serious candidate?
Obviously, it's very troublesome because, not just for myself, but the system is closing down on any alternative voices, any expression of many subject matters and necessities that the American people want to hear about. And the two-party duopoly, indentured as it is to the corporate supremacists that fund it, that have turned Washington, D.C. to corporate occupied territory, are now carving up our country by redistricting and leaving the vast majority of voters with just one dominant party, the Republican Party in one district, the Democratic Party in the other district, so that November 2 is not an election day, it's just a coronation. And I'm trying to break down this system in every way I can. And Peter Miguel Camejo, my vice presidential running mate, has been trying to do the same thing. And we hope in the future that our campaign will be viewed as a harbinger, as pioneering new ground, so that the American people get a political system that's responsive to their necessities, a political system that subordinates corporate power beneath the sovereignty of the people. Yes?
What's next for you?
Well, we're going to be going into a whole number of states, be on the Letterman show on Thursday. But the only way you can reach large audiences in our country is to go on comedy shows. That's a satire. Mr.
Nader?
Yes.
Yeah, Tatiana, independent producer. Can you please comment on latest protest during RNC in New York, and what do you think, would it be continuous protests and demonstrations after the election at all?
RNC?
During RNC there was a lot of protests and demonstration. I'm from
yeah.
New York.
Yes,
Do you think after election, would it be continuous protests and demonstration, or will we come down the whole process?
Well, I think the anti-war movement, which has taken a prolonged vacation because of its support for the war candidate, John Kerry, will start demonstrating, but only after the election. This is part of the bankruptcy of the liberal intelligentsia that has given John Kerry a free ride in their desperate quest for the least worst candidate, even though the least worst candidate has now demonstrated a level of aggressiveness in Iraq that has delighted William Satire, the right-wing columnist for the New York Times. In fact, in our travels around the country, we have people in the audience. We encourage people to make announcements for meetings and demonstrations. And the demonstrations against the war are all scheduled after November 2. I don't think the anti-war movement is going to have the credibility it should deserve if it continues not to pull John Kerry in their direction and instead allows the military-industrial complex and George W. Bush to pull John Kerry in the war direction. A vote for Kerry is a vote for war. A vote for George W. Bush is also a vote for war. Some choice.
Mr. Nader?
You were removed from the debate 4 years ago. Are you going to try to go back in again and be a part of the debate? Or are you just going to sit back and watch this time?
Without a Marine division, it is impossible. It's like an armed fort. It certainly doesn't speak well for what we would like to see as an open democracy in this country. That's all I can say.
You're disappointed about that.
Yes, but you see, we worked in 2000 to help launch a new debate commission. It's called the Citizens Debate Commission. It is controlled by no party, no candidate, and its board of directors is represented by leading conservatives and leading liberals who would never agree on anything other than the need to break apart the old two-party controlled debate commission that's running this show tonight. And the reason why the new debate commission did not succeed in putting on its 5 scheduled debates is because the television networks did not cooperate. Once the television networks ceased cooperating with what basically is a very partisan exclusionary Commission on Presidential Debates, which is a corporation created by the two parties in 1987 and is still controlled by them, we'll see more diverse debate formats. More debates, period. I mean, why do we ration presidential debates? We don't ration reality shows.
Mr. Nader?
Yeah.
My name is Jessica. I'm a reporter with the Arizona Independent Media Center. As the only candidate who's speaking out against corporations, I'd like to know how you feel the corporate media has been covering or not covering your campaign, and perhaps maybe why they're here today. Are they here to cover you as a legitimate third-party candidate?
Well, besides its addiction to prolonged weather reports, the major media is addicted to covering campaigns in terms of horse races and tactics. Tactics and horse races. Therefore, it's missing out on its great potential to address the necessities of the American people through the prism of a presidential campaign and the various parties and candidates. This is all the more deplorable because at their finest moments, the media have documented the very abuses, the deprivations, the injustices, the power plays that are the rationale for the Nader-Camejo ticket. It's because I take the press and the electronic media seriously over the years, at their finest moments. It's because I compiled the clippings over the years of their finest moments that I can simply say to them, I'm running in part because I take you seriously. I don't think you're working hard for these exposés and investigative reports on poverty, the corruption of politics, the crimes and abuses of corporations, just to get a Pulitzer Prize. Yeah.
Are you aware of the allegations that Nathan Sproul, former executive director of the Arizona Republican Party, and his company, Sproul and Associates, has been, there's some accusations that they're in swing states registering people to vote for Nader, in essence, they believe to combat the Democratic Party and John Kerry's campaign?
I'm not aware of that specific situation. But I say to the two parties, get off our backs, stop entangling yourself with our campaign and your insidious schemes. Just let us try to compete for the vote. When the story of the Democrats' dirty tricks, their millions of dollars to try to get us off the ballot, they're hiring Ken Starr's law firm with 50 lawyers in Ohio alone, Kirkland Ellis. They're hiring other Republican corporate law firms to deny millions of our voters an opportunity to vote for candidacies of their choice. It'll be a disgraceful chapter in the history of the Democratic Party. Yes, sir.
Harold Seagoff, private citizen. You have proposed eliminating federal income tax for those making $50,000 or less. What is required and where will the money come from?
First of all, you restore the corporate tax levels to the levels they were in the prosperous 1960s. That'll bring in over $350 billion. Second, you knock out the loopholes that deplete the progressive nature of our taxation, affecting the wealthy. And that means getting rid of the tax havens and the tax shelters that the press has been reporting on all the time. Third, you eliminate corporate welfare, the subsidies, handouts, giveaways, bailouts that total hundreds of billions of dollars a year in very complex direct and indirect transfers of middle-class tax dollars to big corporations. And finally, you reduce the bloated, wasteful military budget that is taken off the table by George W. Bush and John Kerry as a subject for debate. The bloated, wasteful, redundant military budget now amounts to 50 cents out of every dollar the federal government expends daily. And we have no major enemy left in the world. No Soviet Union, no communist China. George W. Bush is trying to propel our country into a nervous breakdown, completely shift the budget away from the people's necessity to what Eisenhower called the military-industrial complex in order to combat a criminal gang. A criminal gang which he says has cells all over the U.S., well-funded, suicidal, hates us, is being subjected to a manhunt, but somehow has never struck back since September 11th. It was Douglas MacArthur, retired general in 1957, who warned the American people about government exaggerating threats in order to concentrate power, expand budgets, and be used for political purposes. And General Wesley Clark, retired, put it very well during the primary when he accused George W. Bush of playing politics with national security.
Ralph, we should go.
Any other pressing?
One more. One more?
Yes.
Sean Peacock of the Independent Press. How do you feel that you have and will be more effective in this election than in 2000?
First of all, you're going to see John Kerry in a few minutes start talking populist language. It's reported in the New York Times that he's going to criticize the drug industry, the oil industry, the commercial HMO, health industry. And if he does that, I think it's in part due to his strategist saying that he better start talking about consumers and workers if he's going to take votes away from the Nader Camejo ticket. So we'll see how it goes. We'll also see how that corporation in the White House, disguised as a human being, George W. Bush, manages to respond. All set?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hats off to the independent media.
Glad there's a little bit of it left.
Well, we'll maybe see